Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in every relationship where your presence stops being seen and starts being expected. You text him first, again. You cancel your plans again. You hold the emotional weight of the connection, again. And in the silence that follows his inconsistency, you start to wonder, maybe if I just try a little harder. But I want to tell you something that most people never learn until it's too late. You are not meant to chase a man into realizing your worth. You are meant to disappear, right, and let that absence do what your words never could. Disappearing doesn't mean you ghost him out of anger. It means you retreat with elegance. You step back, not to punish him, but to protect the version of yourself that was being slowly erased in his shadow. Because let's be honest, when someone never has to earn your presence, they stop respecting it. But when you disappear the right way, with dignity, with self-respect, with no messy texts, no last-minute arguments, no desperate explanations, just clean, calm distance, you become unforgettable. Because silence is louder than begging. Because your absence is now speaking what your heart tried to scream for months. I will not fight for space in a place I was never valued. The truth is, men don't chase noise, they chase peace. They chase the woman who knew when to walk away, not the one who clung harder. They don't miss the one who stayed. They miss the one who vanished with grace. When you remove your presence with intention, it creates a silence that speaks louder than any words you could say. We often think that showing up, staying available, and constantly proving our worth is the way to keep someone close. But in reality, it's in the absence that someone truly feels what you brought into their life. When you're always there, always texting first, always forgiving too fast, always filling in the silence, it becomes easy for someone to take you for granted, not because they're cruel, but because human nature adapts. What is constant becomes expected. What is expected becomes invisible. The power of absence lies in its ability to create contrast. A man doesn't notice the light in the room until someone turns it off. He doesn't realize the warmth you brought into his world until he starts to feel the chill of you not being there. When you remove yourself, not out of manipulation, not out of games, but out of respect for yourself, you create space. And in that space, he is left with only one thing: reflection. He begins to notice the things you used to do, the tiny ways you supported him, the energy you carried, the attention you gave so effortlessly. He feels the drop in emotional connection, the lack of reassurance, the missing rhythm of your consistency. And for the first time, he's not sure you'll be there tomorrow. That uncertainty, when rooted in authenticity, is powerful because it flips the emotional dynamic. Now, he is the one wondering. Now, he is the one checking his phone. Now, he is the one who feels the loss. But this only happens when your absence is real. Not a temporary pause hoping he'll chase. Not a dramatic exit hoping he'll beg. But a calm, grounded disappearance that comes from a place of knowing you deserve more. That's the kind of absence that commands respect. It's not passive-aggressive. It doesn't beg for attention. It simply withdraws the energy that was never matched. And when you pull back with that level of self-respect, it creates a ripple effect in his mind. You see, a man doesn't fall in love with someone who never leaves. He falls in love with the person he feels he could lose. That potential loss wakes something up in him. It triggers a deeper emotional drive to pursue, to prove, to win you back. Not because you forced him, but because he was finally given the space to feel the weight of your presence by experiencing the void of your absence. Most people are afraid to step back because they fear it will make them forgotten. But the truth is, being always available never made anyone unforgettable. What makes you unforgettable is the feeling you left behind when you stopped showing up. The echo of your absence, when done with strength and clarity, has the power to leave a man wondering not just where you went, but why he didn't appreciate you when you were there. Disappearing from someone's life is often seen as a punishment, a way to make them suffer, to get back at them for not treating you right. But when you disappear with the right intention, it's not about hurting them, it's about healing yourself. The idea isn't to vanish in anger or spite, hoping they'll come running after you in regret. That's reactionary. That comes from pain. Disappearing the right way means you're finally choosing to protect your peace, your standards, and your self-worth. It means you've recognized that staying in a situation where you're constantly overlooked, undervalued, or emotionally drained is slowly destroying your sense of self. So instead of trying harder, proving more, or hoping they'll change, you remove yourself, gracefully and silently, not to teach them a lesson, but to save your own spirit. You disappear not to make them chase, but because you no longer want to chase your own value through their validation. This kind of disappearing doesn't come with drama. It's not slamming the door, blocking them in anger, or posting cryptic messages hoping they'll notice. It's not about trying to look unbothered while secretly dying inside. It's not pretending to move on just to get a reaction. That kind of behavior is still rooted in emotional dependency. You're still centered around them, still reacting to them, still giving them power. But when you disappear to protect, everything shifts. You stop waiting for an apology that may never come. You stop explaining your worth to someone who's shown they can't see it. You stop accepting crumbs and calling it love. You're no longer seeking to change their behavior. You're changing yours. You're choosing distance, not because you want to teach them how to love you better, but because you're tired of being in a space where love constantly hurts. There's a quiet strength in walking away with no need for closure, because you've given yourself the clarity. You've seen enough, felt enough, cried enough. You've fought silently for far too long, questioning yourself, doubting your instincts, lowering your standards to hold on to a connection that never felt secure. And in the process, you lost parts of yourself, parts that were vibrant, soft, hopeful, parts that deserved to be protected, not exhausted. Disappearing with intention is reclaiming your emotional power. It's knowing that your silence speaks volumes. It's understanding that you no longer owe them access to you just because of history, chemistry, or potential. You can love someone deeply and still walk away. You can want them to change and still accept they won't. And you can hope they realize what they had, but still choose not to wait for that day. That's what it means to disappear, right? Not to play games, not to get revenge, but to stop showing up where you're not respected, to let your distance be the boundary they never took seriously when you were near, to give yourself the space to breathe, reset, and remember who you were before you made them the center of your world. And when you disappear this way, with grace, self-respect, and finality, you may be surprised, not just at how they react, but at how deeply you begin to heal. Emotional investment doesn't come from comfort alone. It often comes from uncertainty. As much as we crave stability and predictability, the truth is that human psychology responds powerfully to the unknown. When someone is always available, always responding, always showing up first, the brain eventually stops paying attention. It registers that presence is guaranteed, and anything guaranteed starts to lose emotional intensity. This doesn't mean love shouldn't feel safe or consistent. It should. But especially in the early stages of attraction, there's something about not knowing what comes next that creates an emotional pull. For a man to become deeply invested, there has to be a degree of emotional friction, not chaos or manipulation, but unpredictability that keeps him engaged. When everything is handed to him up front, when there's no room for wonder, when he knows exactly how you'll respond before he even reaches out, the dynamic becomes flat. There's no excitement, there's no chase, and more importantly, there's no desire to earn your energy because it's already being given freely, without question. Uncertainty creates space for imagination. It gives his mind something to hold on to, something to explore. He begins to wonder where you are, what you're thinking, if you've moved on, if you miss him. Those questions start taking up space in his mind, and that space, occupied by curiosity and a little doubt, is exactly where emotional connection begins to deepen. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're not handing over your emotional availability to someone who hasn't yet earned it. Think of it this way. The things we value most are the things we had to put effort into. Whether it's a job, a goal, or a person, We don't emotionally attach to what came too easily. We attach to what challenged us, surprised us, and required us to show up. The same applies in dating and relationships. When a man is uncertain about where he stands with you, not because you're confusing, but because you're not chasing, he begins to lean in. He begins to invest emotionally because now there's something real at stake. But this only works when the uncertainty is balanced with authenticity. You're not pretending to be unavailable while secretly obsessing over him. You're not withholding love as a weapon. You're simply allowing space to exist. You're letting him come to you. You're showing that you're not someone who needs constant validation or attention to feel secure. That kind of confidence is magnetic. It's rare, and it creates emotional gravity. On the other hand, when you constantly fill in the space before he ever has to miss you, you rob him of the chance to feel your absence. When you always reach out first, when you constantly reassure him, when you're always available, you become a given. And people rarely chase what they believe will always be there. That doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It means you become intentional with your energy. You let things unfold instead of forcing them. You create just enough uncertainty to allow the emotional investment to build naturally, not through pressure, but through presence, and occasionally through the lack of it. So when you choose to step back a little, when you give space for him to wonder, when you don't answer every message right away or constantly explain your feelings, it's not about being dismissive. It's about letting emotional depth grow on its own, letting him reach for you, letting him question what you mean to him, and in doing so, letting him realize just how much you matter. When you choose to walk away, how you do it matters. Your silence, your absence, it speaks for you. And what it says depends entirely on your mindset. If you disappear out of insecurity or pain, it often communicates confusion, bitterness, or a need for attention. But if you step back from a place of self-respect and clarity, your silence becomes a powerful message. This is what I no longer accept. When you disappear, right, you're not just vanishing, you're expressing your standards without ever having to raise your voice. People notice when your energy shifts, especially someone who's grown used to your constant support, availability, and forgiveness. They feel it when you stop checking in, when your name stops appearing on their screen, when your questions, your kindness, your presence no longer surround them. And in that space, in that quiet, they're left with the version of you that existed before they took you for granted. The version that loved without limits until those limits were crossed. But your silence should never be mistaken for passivity. It's not about walking away in defeat. It's about walking away in alignment with your worth. Because what you tolerate teaches others how to treat you. And if your silence follows a pattern of always coming back, always giving second chances, always making excuses for their behavior, then it loses its meaning. But if your silence is built on consistency, on a clear boundary that you honor within yourself, then it becomes unshakable. This is where real power lies, not in begging someone to change, not in explaining over and over why their behavior hurt you, but in letting your absence remind them that you will not stay where your needs go unmet, that your time, your love, and your energy are privileges, not entitlements. And once they're withdrawn, there's no guarantee they'll return. When you do this, your silence doesn't just reflect strength, it reflects your standard. A lot of people think disappearing is about control, that it's a game, a tactic to make someone chase. But if that's your goal, your energy will always betray you. You'll still be emotionally tied to their reaction. You'll still be watching and waiting to see if they notice. That's not strength. That's fear dressed up as independence. Real power is when you're okay if they never come looking. When you know that walking away was not about creating movement in them, but about creating peace in you. So when you go silent, let it be rooted in something real. Let it be a reflection of the line you've drawn, internally and externally. Let your absence say, I refuse to repeat cycles that diminish me. Let it echo with dignity, not desperation. Let it carry the weight of your evolution, the growth that taught you not to explain your worth, but to embody it. Because the right people won't just notice your silence. They'll reflect on it. They'll feel the difference between someone who left in pain and someone who left in power. And if they ever come back, it won't be because you begged. It will be because your silence made them confront what your words never could. When someone is inconsistent, when they show up only when it's convenient, text when they're bored, call when they're lonely, you start to feel like you're in a relationship with confusion, not a person. You never quite know where you stand. One day they seem warm and engaged, and the next, distant or distracted. That inconsistency creates a loop in your mind. You keep trying to decode their actions, wondering if you did something wrong, if they're just busy, or if maybe they just need more time. So you try harder. You initiate conversations. You become more available. You fill in the emotional gaps they leave behind. And in doing so, you start carrying the weight of the entire connection. You text first because they didn't. You reassure them even when you're the one feeling uncertain. You explain your feelings while they stay quiet about theirs. And slowly, your emotional world begins to orbit around someone who is only partially present. You become the glue holding something together that was never fully built. But relationships are meant to be mutual. Connection requires effort from both sides. If you're the only one reaching, giving, fixing, then you're not in a relationship. You're in a pattern. And here's where the shift begins. When someone is inconsistent, the answer isn't to work harder. It's to stop working altogether. Not out of anger, not as a strategy, but because your effort should match theirs. And if they're giving less than the minimum, why are you giving more than the maximum? This is where the power of disappearing comes in. Because your silence breaks the pattern, it stops the cycle. When you